And whatsoever you shall ask in my name, that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. If ye love me, keep my commandments.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Mekah, Kudash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. All right, this is going to be a continuation, all right, of the series, Background and In-Depth Learning and Background, or Learn and Be Edified, which yesterday, all right, I did a video, I started it going into the book of Daniel, the 11th chapter, okay, and I went into pretty much the first verse. All right, now today we're going to go into Daniel 11 verse 2, okay, and the point is, giving you the background and the details, okay, of the verse, what's going on here, because like I said, hey, even from verse 2 to verse 3 alone, it's a couple hundred years, all right, of history in there, of information, and you're jumping from here to straight here, so you got to really understand, all right, what's going on. So this is the book of Daniel, chapter 11, verse 2. It says, "And now will I shew thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia." Okay, so at this point in time, all right, in this time period, we're dealing with the Achaemenid Empire. Okay, now this is after Egypt, after the Assyrians have ruled, and after the Babylonians have ruled. Okay, and now you have the Medo-Persians, which at this point it was the Persians who were on top. So the current king at this time, all right, that we're reading of is Cyrus the Great, all right, or Cyrus the Second, and we're going to read a little bit about him. Now, Cyrus is not a part of these 3 kings or these 4 kings that are yet to come. These were the kings that came after, all right, Cyrus the Great. Okay, so I'm gonna first list the names of these kings, and then we're gonna read about them, because like I mentioned yesterday, when you know about these kings, when you know who they are, it's easy to know, all right, who's who, which one was the first king, which one was the second king, how are they significant, and what impact, what role did they have on us. Okay, and when you know the secular history, it brings the scriptures to life even more, because now you're making a connection, all right, through whether it's through archaeology or just through the secular end, that is literally parallel to certain things that are being said in the scriptures, for those who say that the Bible is made up. All right, so there shall yet stand up 3 kings in Persia. Now those 3 kings started with Cambyses II, and he was the son of Cyrus the Great. Okay, and then followed by Cambyses' younger brother, which when we get into that, some sources say that it was an imposter. Some say it was actually his younger brother, but his name was Bardiya, okay, or otherwise known as Smerdis. And the 3rd, all right, was Darius the Great, okay, and he was a Persian. All right, now when you read up, there's a difference here. This is Darius the Mede. The 3rd king in verse 2 is Darius the Persian. These are 2 different Dariuses, all right, don't get them confused, okay. And then the 4th, which it says shall be far richer than they all, is Xerxes, okay, or as we know him as Ahasuerus of the book of Esther. Okay, this is the man from the movie 300, super rich, tall, had that, hoop thing from his ear and his nose and all of that. Yeah, him. All right, he was far richer than they all. It tells us in the book of Esther he had 127 provinces. Okay, and by his strength through his riches he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. We're going to go into that and see why he did that. All right, but let's start off with Cyrus the Great. So this is Cyrus the Great. It says Cyrus is second of Persia. Second because his grandfather, he was named after his grandfather, who was Cyrus the First. Okay, but his grandfather on his father's side. Okay, because yesterday when we went into it, I mentioned that Darius the Mede, all right, or his historical name Astyages, was the grandfather of Cyrus, but that was through his mother's side. Okay, but through his father's side, his grandfather was Cambyses, Cyrus the First. So it says here, commonly known as Cyrus the Great, also called Cyrus the Elder by the Greeks, was the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, the first Persian Empire. Under his rule, the empire embraced all the previous civilized states of the ancient Near East, expanding vastly and eventually conquering most of Western Asia. And this is going into Daniel the 7th chapter. It tells you that the bear, okay, had, as a matter of fact, let me just pull it up. All right, in Daniel 7 and in Daniel 8, but let's deal with Daniel 7. When it lists the beasts, when it gets down, all right, to verse 5, it says, and behold another beast, a second like to a bear. Now this bear represents the Medo-Persian Empire. It says, and it raised up itself on one side. And that's what we're reading about here, the Achaemenid Empire, all right, or the Persian Empire. It says, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth, or in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So those 3 ribs, all right, were going into Lydia, okay, Babylon, and Egypt, which are places that this empire eventually took over. All right, now the first 2, Lydia and Babylon, were taken during the time of Cyrus's rule, but it wasn't until his son Cambyses, all right, who took over Egypt, as we're going to read. So it says here, expanded vastly and eventually conquered most of Western Asia and much of Central Asia. So, you know, as you're doing this, you also want to pull up what you're looking at, you know, so you can just type in Achaemenid Empire, for example, and you'll see what we're talking about here. All right, so what you're seeing here is this map of everything, all the places that they basically took over. Okay, now you have Susa, all right, around here, you know, around Persia, around here, and they took over this whole colored area. Now, as they progressed and came here into Asia Minor, all right, and they basically, you know, took over this area and a little bit up in here, eventually that causes problems. And we're going to read about that when we get to Darius. All right, when we get to Darius the Great, eventually that the taking over this area tends to cause problems for them. But just so you can visualize what we're talking about, all right, talks about this is Asia Minor and this whole area. All right, so it says from the Mediterranean Sea and Hellespont in the west to the Indus River in the east. So the Mediterranean is over here. I believe the Hellespont should be somewhere around here, all right, or here, okay, all the way to the Indus River, which is here, border of India. And that's a very, very big portion, okay. It says, Cyrus the Great created the largest empire the world had yet seen. Under his successors, the empire eventually stretched at its maximum extent from parts of the Balkans, all right, Bulgaria, Paeonia, and Thrace, Macedonia, and Eastern Europe proper in the west, to the Indus Valley in the east. The reign of Cyrus the Great lasted about 30 years. Cyrus built his empire by first conquering the Median Empire, all right, and that's what I mentioned in Daniel 11:1, because the Median Empire was ruled by Cyrus's grandfather on his mother's side, which was who we know in the scriptures is Darius the Mede, or Astyages. All right, so when Cyrus went up against him and took him down, he conquered the Median Empire. It says, then the Lydian Empire, which was one of the ribs in Daniel 7 that was in the mouth, all right, of the bear. It says, and eventually the Neo-Babylonian Empire. And that was one of the other ribs that was also in the mouth of the bear, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, which when we read about the fall of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, we can read about this in Daniel, the 5th chapter. Okay, and it talks about Belshazzar. All right, let me just pull it up real quick. It mentions here Belshazzar. Okay, and Belshazzar, although people might think he was the last king, when you really go into it, Belshazzar was not the actual king. All right, Belshazzar was the king regent. He was the one left in charge because his father Nabonidus was the actual official king. However, in his absence, he made his son ruler in his stead. All right, so when you read on down, and Daniel comes in, in this chapter, and he breaks down the writing on the wall, it tells you that Belshazzar made him the third ruler, all right, in the kingdom. Daniel 5:29. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. All right, why is that? Because the second ruler was actually Belshazzar, and the first was his father. Okay. Now it says, and this was the downfall, all right, of the Neo-Babylonian Empire that we're reading of here. All right, that Cyrus gave the command to take down. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Now, when you click on the word took, okay, it takes you to the Aramaic, but you can click into the Hebrew. It's pretty much the same word. It says quabal, and it says here to take, receive, okay, to receive. And when you look at a couple precepts in which it's being used in, you see here it says, then David received them. Okay, then saith the Lord, choose thee. All right, it says here, so they killed the bullocks, and the priests received the blood. All right, so when you go into it, the fall of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, it was by the commands of Cyrus, but the jurisdiction of that area was given into the hand of Darius. All right, Darius the Mede. So let's keep going. And I'm doing this in video format because I know it's a lot of information, so you can pause it, come back to it however it is. But it says here, he led an expedition into Central Asia, which resulted in major campaigns that were described as having brought into subjection every nation without exception. Cyrus did not venture into Egypt and was alleged to have died in battle fighting the Masagidi along the Daria in December 530 BC. But Xenophon said Cyrus did not die in battle, and he returned to the capital again. Well, most historians actually say that he died. He says he was succeeded by his son Cambyses II, who managed to conquer Egypt, Nubia, and Cyrenia during his short rule. So that was the third rib, Egypt, okay, which Cambyses II. All right, remember, we say Cambyses, but there was a Cambyses the first. So you got to specify who you're talking about. So in Daniel 11, so now we're getting started on the three kings, right? There shall stand up yet three kings. The first of those three kings was Cambyses II, and we're going to read about him. And he was the son, all right, of Cyrus the Great. It says Cyrus the Great. So a little bit more about Cyrus, because Cyrus ultimately understand that when the Babylonians, all right, when in the Book of Nebuchadnezzar and them and all that, when they came and they besieged Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, destroyed the gates, and they took us captives into Babylon. When Cyrus finally, rose into power and took down the Babylonian Empire, guess what? He allowed us. He gave us an edict, or he gave an edict. They called the Edict of Restoration, as we're about to read, allowing us, or making that decree for us to go back to Jerusalem and go rebuild the temple. Okay, and this is the process that started with Cyrus, and then it was halted throughout, and then it was restored again. We're gonna touch on that as well. So as we're going into the secular history, we'll get the precepts that link with, okay, how did each king affect us? Okay, so it's like background information as well. So it says here, Cyrus the Great respected the customs and religions of the lands he conquered, because Cyrus wasn't known for, being like an aggressive, brutal kind of ruler. Okay, this became a very successful model for centralized administration and establishing a government working to the advantage and profit of its subjects. In fact, the administration of the empire through satraps. Now, a satrap was like a governor. Like today you use the term governors, and the Greeks use the term tyrants, but a satrap would be like one that was set in charge over a certain area. It says satraps and the vital principle of forming a government at Persargadae were the works of Cyrus. What is sometimes referred to as the Edict of Restoration, which actually was 2 edicts as they say here, described in the Bible as being made by Cyrus the Great, left as a lasting legacy on the Jewish religion. It wasn't a Jewish religion, according to Isaiah 45:1 in the Hebrew Bible. So now let's go to Isaiah 45:1. Okay, let's try that again. All right, Isaiah 45:1. Okay, so it says, this is Isaiah 45:1. Thus saith the Lord, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, to his anointed, to Cyrus. Now, don't get it twisted. His anointed here is not, that doesn't mean Cyrus is an Israelite, and it doesn't mean that Cyrus is the Messiah. Okay, it just means that he was chosen to do this purpose. Okay, let's look up the word anointed. It says here, Mashayach. All right, Mashayach. It says anointed one. Yeah, here they don't really give you the exact details of it. Let's see, anointed. Okay, meaning. Let's check the online etymology. Let's see if they'll give us something. If not, well, we already know what it is anyway. All right, it doesn't really give us that, but anyway, we know that Cyrus is not the Messiah. All right, but what it means by anointed is that he was a chosen vessel of the Lord to fulfill this specific tasks. All right, so it says here, whose right hand I have holden to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the 2 leaved gates, and the gate shall not be shut. I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass and cut in sunder the bars of iron. Let me see. All right, so let's go. Let me see. I believe it might have been Isaiah 44. It also mentioned Cyrus. All right, this is Isaiah 44:28. It says, "Thus saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd." All right, that saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid. Okay, now why is this? Once again, because the Lord set up Cyrus to also fulfill this specific task. Okay, so hey, guess what? Cyrus by name is actually written of in the scriptures, and we're reading about him right here, and it's confirming what the Edict of Restoration. Guess what? It says it right here. Isaiah prophesied it. Okay. Now, Isaiah Isaiah lived prior to Cyrus, way before Cyrus, because Isaiah came before Jeremiah, and Jeremiah was prophesying before the Babylonians came up into power to come and take us down. So this is a couple hundred years, before Cyrus was even on the scene, but yet there's a prophecy concerning him by name. So what's up with that? Is that fairy tales too? Anyway, this is going into that Edict of Restoration. So it says, Where we at? Okay, according to Isaiah 45:1 in the Hebrew Bible, the Most High anointed Cyrus for this task. See? Even referring to him as a Messiah. But that's not what he really, that's not what it meant. Okay, it says, and he is the only non-Jewish figure in the Bible to be called so. Cyrus the Great is also well recognized for his achievements in human rights politics and military strategy, as well as his influence on both Eastern and Western civilizations. Okay, now let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to read on Cyrus. So now you know a little bit about Cyrus, all right? And he was the one the Lord used to give that decree for us to go back and rebuild the temple. Okay, now moving on to his son Cambyses, all right, Cambyses II, which is the first of the three kings. Okay, so it says here Cambyses II was the second king of kings of the Achaemenid Empire from 530 to 522 BC, so about 8 years. He was the son and successor of Cyrus the Great, and his mother was Casandane. Before his ascension, Cambyses had briefly served as the governor of northern Babylonia under his father from April 539 to December 538 BC. Afterwards, he continued to roam in the Babylonian cities of Babylon and Sippar, before being appointed by his father as co-ruler in 530, who set off, and also for those that might not be familiar, since we're dealing with BC, the time is counting down. Okay, when you go from 530 to 522, you're going into the future, because time counts downwards. You know, you have 500 all to 400 to 300 to 200, all right, BC, all right, and then after that, AD, the time starts to count up. So don't get, oh, you saying, well, 530, 550 to 530, shouldn't it be reversed? No. Okay, it says co-ruler who set off to mount an expedition against the Masagidi of Central Asia, where he met his end. Cambyses thus became the sole ruler of the vast Achaemenid Empire, facing no noticeable opposition. His relatively brief reign was marked by his conquests in Africa, notably Egypt. Remember that rib, all right, in the bear's mouth. It says which he conquered after his victory over the Egyptian pharaoh Psammetichus III at the Battle of Pelusium in 525 BC. After having established himself in Egypt, he expanded his holdings in Africa even further, as his conquest of Cyrenaica in the spring of 522, Cambyses hurriedly left Egypt to deal with a rebellion in Persia. When en route in Syria, Eber Nari, he received a wound to the thigh, which was soon affected by gangrene, which is pretty disgusting. This is what they say it looks like. Cambyses died 3 weeks later at a location called Ecbatana. Sometimes you'll see this spelled as Ecbatane, but it says which is most likely the modern city of Hama. He died childless and was thus succeeded by his younger brother Bardiya, who ruled for a short period before being overthrown by Darius the Great, who went on to increase the power of the Achaemenids even further. Now, dealing with Cambyses II, okay, when we go into the book of Ezra, all right, Ezra, the 4th chapter, at this point, all right, we are building because Cyrus has given us the decree to go back and build. Okay, let me see. I want to see if I can find it. Let's see. So, rule Babel. Maybe it says it here. Okay. Let's see. Ezra 2. Let's check Ezra 1. There we go. All right. This is the book of Ezra, chapter 1, verse 1. It says, now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and put it also in writing. So that's what we read about earlier. I'm just going to go back to Cyrus real quick. When we read about the edict of restoration, let's click on that real quick here. It says the Edict of Restoration, or the Edict of Cyrus, is part of the biblical narrative about the return from Babylonian captivity. The edict is thrice mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, each time with minor textual variations and additions. It is presented as authorizing and encouraging the Jews exiled by Nebuchadnezzar to relocate to the land of Israel and actively engage in rebuilding the temple destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. The historical background of the narrative is confirmed by archaeology. Whoa! But the edict as such is not corroborated by any finds. Its existence is as one single legal act rather than a general policy of reparation is contested. Okay. Let's see. Okay, it says initial edict. Well, we read that. We're about to read that here in the book of Ezra. Okay, but anyway, you see Cyrus's edict. He gave that decree. Okay, and actually, let's look at this. There's something. Cyrus cylinder. Okay. Let's see. All right, it says here, the cylinder's text has traditionally been seen by biblical scholars as corroborative evidence of Cyrus's policy of the reparation of the Jewish people following their Babylonian captivity. All right, it says an act that the book of Ezra attributes to Cyrus, as the text refers to the restoration of cult sanctuaries and reparation and deported peoples. So were we not a part of those peoples that were deported and so on and so forth? It says this interpretation has been disputed as the text identifies only Mesopotamian sanctuaries and makes no mention of Jews, Jerusalem, or Judea. Well, understand that at this time, going all the way back to the Assyrians, they were known for deporting people. So by this time, you have a bunch of people that are in places that is not really their homeland. You know, some of them just stayed there, and some of them wanted to go back. Now, Cyrus's decree allowed certain of these deportees or these people who were deported to go back, all right, to their homelands. And in our case specifically, as we're reading here, we were allowed to go back and rebuild. Verse 2, Ezra 1 and 2, thus saith Cyrus king of Persia, the Lord, power of heaven, hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth. Did we not read that in the book of Isaiah? It says, and hath charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? His power be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord power of Israel. He is the God which is in Jerusalem. All right, and this is the commission that he, he gave us permission to go back. So Cyrus gives us permission, right? He appoints, let's read this real quick, Ezra 2 and 1. Now these are the children of the province that went up out of the captivity of those which had been carried away from Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, or whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away unto Babylon, and came again unto Jerusalem and Judah, every one to his city, which came with Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Seraiah, Realiah, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mispar, Bigvai, Rehum, Baanah, the number of the men of the people of Israel. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but now you know what was going on. So fast forwarding on to Ezra 4, as we're building, okay, we've already been given permission, but as we're building this temple, okay, let's go back to Cambyses. Let me see. Cambyses the second, right? So Cyrus now dies. Okay, Cyrus dies because when we look up, let's see, Cyrus decree to rebuild Jerusalem. It says here in April Okay, it says, in the year 539 BCE, after uniting the Persian and Median kingdoms under his rule, King Cyrus subdued the Babylonian Empire. In 538 BC, King Cyrus made a public declaration granting the Jews the right to return to Judah and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. So that means for 8 years, because he died in about 530. So under Cyrus's rule, we were able to build, all right, and continue building, but the building wasn't completed before Cyrus died. So there was now a new king, Cambyses II, at the time where we're still building this temple. Okay? But that's when we start to face this trouble here in Ezra, the 4th chapter, which says, now when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the children of the captivity builded the temple unto the Lord power of Israel, okay, they came to Zerubbabel and to the chief of the fathers and said unto them, let us build with you, for we seek your God as ye do, and we do sacrifice unto him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Ashur, which brought us up hither. Why is this? Okay, when you go back during the time of the northern kingdom being in the land, and so with the southern kingdom, you get to the point of the last northern king, Hoshea, all right, who was at the time when Samaria got besieged by the Assyrians, right? Shalmaneser V, and then so on and so forth. When they besieged us, they deported, all right, they deported the northern kingdom out of their land and put them in a different land, all right, around where Assyria is at. And then they imported heathens from different locations into the land of Samaria and so on and so forth, all right, where the northern kingdom used to dwell. So it was like a swap, all right. You can read about that in the book of Kings. And so these adversaries are those people and their descendants who are now living in the land where the northern kingdom used to dwell. But remember, when they first came there, they were defiling the land. So the Lord sent lions among them. And that's why the Assyrian king sent a Levite to go and show them, look, this is what you have to do. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. So where the Lord won't keep tearing your ass up with them lions. So that's what got them into that mindset and that spirit, to where they kept doing that generation and generation over, to where now they started to, try to claim as if they were, like a part of us. And that's why they said what they said here, let us build with you, for we seek your God as ye do. And we do sacrifice unto him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, because that's when they got imported into the land, all right, and they had to learn how to basically deal while being on the land. But that did not make them Israelites. They were still heathens. Verse 3, but Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the rest of the chief of the fathers of Israel said unto them, ye have nothing to do with us to build an house unto our God, but we ourselves together will build unto the Lord power of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, hath commanded us. See? So we were like, nah, you got no parts of this. This is nope, stay away. It says, verse 4, then the people of the land weakened the hands of the people of Judah and troubled them in building. So we can't build with you. We're going to stress you out. And hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, even until the reign of Darius, king of Persia. And from Cyrus to Darius, in between, you had Cambyses II, and you had Bardiya, then you had Darius. So they frustrated our purpose while Cyrus was alive, through the reign of Cambyses, through the time of Bardiya, all the way until the time of Darius. All right. Now, verse 6 says, and in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, wrote they unto him an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. And in the days, and I'm going to come back and explain that. And in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam and Mithredath, Tabiel, and the rest of their companions unto Artaxerxes, king of Persia, and the writing of the letter was written in the Syrian tongue and interpreted in the Syrian tongue. Now, this Ahasuerus and this Artaxerxes is when you read into it, this is not talking. Don't just see the name Ahasuerus and instantly just, oh, that's the king during the time of Esther. That's not who it's talking about in this verse. All right, because by the time of Esther, the temple was already completed. Okay, because Darius, during the time of Darius, was when we completed the temple. All right, we were able to build it back up. Okay, now Darius came before Ahasuerus. He came before him. So it wouldn't make sense for them to say in the reign of Ahasuerus, which if this is the same Ahasuerus, the husband of Esther, they wrote accusations against us. But in the time of Ahasuerus, we already finished the temple. All right, when you go into it, let's click here. For Ahasuerus, it says here, now check this out. When you click on the lexicon, it tells you, I will be silent and poor. Title of the king of Persia, probably Xerxes. This is incorrect. It's not talking about Xerxes. All right. This Ahasuerus in Ezra, when you go to the dictionaries section of the blue letter, and you click on Ahasuerus, it says here, there are 3 kings designated by this name in scripture. 1. The father of Darius the Mede, mentioned in Daniel 9:1, which was probably Xerxes the first. Okay, and I brought this out yesterday. Known by this name in profane history, the king of Media and conqueror of Nineveh. Okay, so in Daniel 9:1, when you see Ahasuerus, it's talking about Xerxes. Verse 2, or the second time, the king mentioned in Ezra 4:6. Probably the Cambyses of profane history, the son and successor of Cyrus. Okay, and then it says the son, and then the third mention of Ahasuerus is the son of Darius Hystaspes, the king named in the book of Esther. He ruled over kingdoms of Persia, Media, and Babylonia. Now, it says Darius Hystaspes, but when we get to Darius, you're gonna find out that it's actually not Hystaspes, because when you look up Darius the Great, it says that his father, all right, his father's name was Hystaspes, all right, not him. Okay, but like I mentioned earlier, when dealing with history, you're not always gonna get one exact answer. You might get, one here, one says this, one says that, but you'll get the overall message. It says here, from India to Ethiopia, this was in all probability the Xerxes of profane history, who succeeded his father Darius. It says of the book of Esther, the name Artaxerxes occurs for Ahasuerus. He reigned for, we know about him. Okay, so now you understand that when you see Ahasuerus, there's 3 kings that are designated with that name in the scriptures. So you got to be able to identify which one it is. In Daniel 9:1, it's talking about Xerxes. He was a Median king. All right. In Ezra 4:6, it's talking about Cambyses II. Okay, because he was the ruler after Cyrus. So it says Cyrus gave us the decree. We start building. Okay, but then Cyrus eventually dies. Okay, it says all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia. So Cyrus eventually dies, all right? And who comes after Cyrus? Cambyses. So he is that Ahasuerus here that they wrote the accusations against us to. All right, he is the same Artaxerxes here. So they wrote these letters to him, okay? It says, Rehum the chancellor and Shimshai the scribe wrote a letter against Jerusalem to Artaxerxes the king in this sort. And, you can read what it says exactly, but I'm just going to go to the point, all right, to save time. But they basically talk, against us, They say, look into the records and see how these are rebellious people, and, they're gonna make life hell for you if you let them build this city, all right. Let's see. All right. So the king, Cambyses, replied. It says, the letter which he sent unto us hath been plainly read before me. And I commanded, and search hath been made, and it is found that this city of old time hath made insurrection against kings, and that rebellion and sedition have been made therein. So I'm going to jump down verse 21. Give ye now commandment to cause these men to cease, and that this city be not builded until another commandment shall be given from me. Take heed now that ye fail not to do this. Why should damage grow to the hurt of the kings? Okay, and so it says now, so this is what Cambyses, like we just read here, all right, this is the decree he made. So his father Cyrus allows us to go rebuild, but then these heathens make an accusation against us, and so when Cyrus passes away and his son Cambyses comes to rule, he reads this and he's like, oh, stop it, stop them from building. So now during the reign of Cambyses, for those 8 years, we can't build. So it says, verse 23, now when the copy of King Artaxerxes, notice how it's interchanging. One time it mentions him as Ahasuerus, another time it mentions him as Artaxerxes. It's talking about the same person. It says, a letter was read before Rehum and Shimshai, the scribe, and their companions. They went up in haste to Jerusalem unto the Jews, and made them to cease by force and power. Then ceased the work of the house of God, which is at Jerusalem. So it ceased until the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia. See, so dealing with Cambyses, this is how he was related to us, you know, in terms of what he did and how it affected us. So now we've covered Cyrus, we've covered Cambyses II, which in Daniel 11:2, he was the first of the 3 kings, all right? Or I should say first of the 4 kings. So after him comes Bardiya, okay? Now Bardiya is said to be his younger brother, okay? But as we're going to read, we're going to hear some interesting things about Bardiya, okay? Now Bardiya didn't rule for long, all right? He died, he only ruled for a couple of months. He died in the same year. So it says Bardiya, also known as Smerdis amongst the Greeks, possibly died 522 BC. Now remember, Cambyses reigned until 522 BC. So in the same year that Cambyses died and Bardiya came into power, Bardiya died in the same year. It says, was the son of Cyrus the Great and the younger brother of Cambyses II, both Persian kings. There are sharply divided views on his life. Bardiya either ruled the Achaemenid Empire for a few months in 522 BC, or was impersonated by a magus, which is a magi, called Gaumata, until he was toppled by Darius the Great. Okay, so this is the story of Bardiya, all right, the brother of Cambyses. Now in Daniel 11:2, when you start with Cambyses II, the next is Bardiya. All right, and now you know about him. Now they claim that it was he was actually either the brother or he was an imposter. But in his death, we're gonna read about his death when we get to Darius the Great. Now this guy, he only ruled for a few months. He didn't really have any significant impact on us. All right, the next person that really has an impact is Darius the Great. Okay, boom, Darius. In Daniel 11:2, he is the 3rd of these 3 kings before the 4th king, which is Xerxes, because he was the father of Xerxes. All right, so it says here, Darius the First, the Great, and it was during his time that we were allowed to go back and rebuild or continue building the temple, because remember, it was halted. So it says Darius the First, alive from 550 to 486, commonly known as Darius the Great, was the 3rd Persian king of kings of the Achaemenid Empire, reigning from 522 BCE until his death in 486 BCE. He ruled the empire at its peak, when it included much of West Asia, parts of the Caucasus, parts of the Balkans, Thrace, Macedonia, and Paeonia, most of the Black Sea coastal regions, Central Asia, as far as the Indus Valley, in the Far East. Darius ascended the throne by overthrowing the legitimate Achaemenid monarch Bardiya. whom he later fabricated to be an impostor named Gaumata. All right, so there's people that say that there's historians that say that Darius found out, okay, that Bardiya was an impostor, and he ended up killing him, and he became, the king. And I'm going to read the story of how Darius became king. It's an interesting one. All right. And then others also say that no, Darius was a usurper who came up in there, killed Bardiya, okay, and fabricated a story about being from the same royal line, all right, as all of them. So he now became king. So like I said, you won't get an exact one. You'll get, hey, some people say this, some people say that, but overall, you'll get the message. All right, so it says, the new king met with rebellions throughout his kingdom. Okay, well, before we go here, let's go into how he became king, ascension, right? Now, here is an image, okay, that is supposed to be the lineage of Darius. Now, it has Achaemenes, Tispes, and then on the left, you have Cyrus the First. This is not Cyrus the Great. This is his grandfather. Then you have Cambyses the First, which is the father of Cyrus the Great. Okay, so see, through Cyrus's father's side, his grandfather is Cyrus the First, but through his mother's side, Mandane, okay, his grandfather would be Astyages, which was a Mede. This Cyrus the Second is the Cyrus the Great that we spoke about. This is his son Cambyses, and then boom, his other son Bardiya. Now, when you look on the other side of this, you have Ariamnes, Arsames, Hystaspes, and then Darius the First. Okay, so some sources say that Darius the First is Hystaspes. Some say that he is the son of Hystaspes. Okay, but he is commonly known as Darius the Great. So that's what I'm going to refer to him as. So his ascension, all right, to the throne says there are different accounts of the rise of Darius to the throne from both Darius himself and Greek historians. The oldest records report a convoluted sequence of events in which Cambyses II lost his mind, murdered his brother Bardiya, and was killed by an infected leg wound. That's what we read earlier. Okay. After this, Darius and a group of 6 nobles traveled to Sikayuvadi to kill an usurper, Gaumata, who had taken the throne by pretending to be Bardiya during the true king's absence. So, they're saying that, hey, look, Cambyses lost his mind, killed his brother, and then you had a usurper, all right, a magi, who saw that Bardiya was dead, and it wasn't really publicly known. So he came and posed as Bardiya, says, hey, look, I'm Bardiya. And Darius found that out, and along with 6 nobles, they killed him, so on and so forth. That's one story. It says Darius's account, written at the Behustan inscription, states that Cambyses II killed his own brother Bardiya, but that this murder was not known among the Iranian people. A would-be usurper named Gaumata came and lied to the people, stating he was Bardiya. So what's going on here is like when you watch Game of Thrones, in the first season, when, for those that are familiar, when Ned, okay, starts to read the book and starts to find out that, oh shoot, what were they called? The Lannisters are apparently imposters, or this, that, and the blonde hair, and he starts putting 2 and 2 together. Although it's written in the records, he finds out that, oh, there was some treachery going on in here. So now you have different stories. You have the public story that says they're royalty. The other says, nah, this happened. He finds out the truth. He gets put to death. All this, that, and the third. A lot of drama going on. That's what always happened in the past in these different king's courts. Okay, there's different stories and drama and this, that, and the third. So it says here, a would-be usurper named Gaumata came and lied to the people, stating he was Bardiya. The Iranians, which are Persians or Elamites, had grown rebellious against Cambyses' rule, and on 11 March 522 BCE, a revolt against Cambyses broke out in his absence. On July 1st, the Iranian people chose to be under the leadership of Gaumata as Bardiya because they didn't know. No member of the Achaemenid family would rise against Gaumata, for the safety of their own life. Darius, who had served Cambyses as his lance-bearer until the deposed ruler's death, prayed for aid, and in September 522, along with Otanes, Interphrenes, Gabrius, Hydarnes, Megabeses, and Epiphanes, killed Gaumata in the fortress of Sikayuvadi. Herodotus provides a dubious account of Darius's ascension. So they've killed the usurper, but now there's 6 nobles, and then you have Darius. Who becomes king, right? So it says several days after Gaumata had been assassinated, Darius and the other 6 nobles discussed the fate of the empire. At first, the 7 discussed the form of government, a democratic republic, was strongly pushed by Otanes, an oligarchy was pushed by Megabeses, while Darius pushed for a monarchy. After stating that a republic would lead to corruption and internal fighting, while a monarchy would be led with a single-mindedness not possible in other governments, Darius was able to convince the other nobles. To decide who would become the monarch, 6 of them decided on a test, with Otanes abstaining as he had no interest in being king. They were to gather outside the palace, mounted on their horses at sunrise, and the man whose horse neighed first in recognition of the sunrise would become king. And neigh is like when they do the, that thing. It says, according to Herodotus, Darius had a slave, Oeabares, who rubbed his hand over the genitals of a mare that Darius's horse favored. When the 6 gathered, Oeabares placed his hand beside the nostrils of Darius's horse, who became excited at the scent and neighed. So Darius had a slave go rub his hands on the genitals of a certain other horse that Darius's horse, was with it. He liked it. He liked that horse. So when the slave came and put that hand next to Darius's horse's nose, Darius's horse smells the box. He smells the genitals of the horse that he likes. He's like, oh shit. He gets all up into it. All right. And so he neighs, and these people are thinking that, oh, he neighed at the sunrise. No, it was because of that. It says this was followed by lightning and thunder, leading the others to dismount and kneel before Darius in recognition of his apparent divine providence. In this account, Darius himself claimed that he achieved the throne not through fraud, but cunning, even erecting a statue of himself mounted on his neighing horse with the inscription, Darius, son of Hystaspes, obtained the sovereignty of Persia by the sagacity of his horse and the ingenious contrivance of Oeabares, his groom. All right. Okay, it says here, according to the accounts of Greek historians, so what we read was Darius's account. It says now, according to the account of Greek historians, Cambyses II had left Patizaithes in charge of the kingdom when he headed for Egypt. He later sent Xerxes to murder Bardiya. After killing Patizaithes, he put his brother Gaumata, a Magian who resembled Bardiya, on the throne and declared him the great king. And then, they got discovered. They, killed him. Darius becomes king. All right. So that's the story, all right, of Darius in the secular, how he became king. Okay. Now, what did he do as king? It says here, Darius ascended the throne by overthrowing the legitimate Achaemenid monarch, whom he later fabricated to be an impostor named Gaumata. So now we've heard both sides of it. The new king met with rebellions throughout his kingdom and quelled them each time. Now, before we get to that part, let's deal with how he affected us. What impact did Darius have on Israel? Well, when you remember, at this time, the building of our temple has been halted, because after Cyrus died, it was halted since then. So let's go to the Apocrypha and let's read, I think it's First Ezra or First Esdras. Let's check the 4th chapter. right. Okay. So, First Ezra, the 4th chapter. Now, for brothers who've read it, all right, if you haven't, I recommend go read it. When you read in the beginning of Esdras, in the first Esdras, it gives a recap of what happens. But now it tells you that, let's see if he says it. There we go. First Esdras chapter 3. Now when Darius reigned, he made a feast unto all his subjects, and unto all his household, and unto all the princes of Media and Persia. So they had done all this, right? Now I'm just gonna recap it for you. And he had basically, like it says in verse 4, then 3 young men that were the guard of the king, the guard that kept the king's body, spake one to another, and one of those 3 men was Zerubbabel. Okay, so they basically said, hey, let's each come up with a wise saying, and we'll present it to the king, and whoever has the wisest saying will get, great rewards of the king. So the first says that, and it's basically who is the strongest, right? So the first one says that, I believe he said the wine. See, the first said, or the first wrote, wine is the strongest, and he gives his reasoning. The second wrote, the king is the strongest, gives his reasoning. The third wrote, women are strongest, but above all things, truth beareth away the victory. Okay, and that was the third was Zerubbabel. Okay, so now Zerubbabel ends up winning. Okay, and let's see. We read all the way down to all right. So it says and with that he held his peace. So this is after Zerubbabel has said, he broke down what he said. And all the people then shouted and said, great is truth, because Zerubbabel said women are the strongest, but above them all is the truth. And he won with that. So great is the truth, and mighty above all things. Then said the king unto him, ask what thou wilt more than is appointed in the writing. So there's an appointed reward, but what more do you want? And we will give it thee, because thou art found wisest, and thou shalt sit next to me and shalt be called my cousin. Not literal, not by blood relation, but, someone that's close to you, basically. Then said he unto the king, remember thy vow, which thou hast vowed to build Jerusalem in the day when thou camest to thy kingdom, and to send away all the vessels that were taken out of Jerusalem, which Cyrus set apart when he vowed to destroy Babylon, and to send them again thither. Thou hast vowed to build up the temple which the Edomites burned when Judea was made desolate by the Chaldeans. Woo! Okay. Obadiah mentions this, where it says, they said, matter of fact, let's bring it out. So you see, Esau got to pay as well. So the Edomites were partakers in what? In our destruction when the Babylonians came. All right. Let me see. Even to the foundation. Oh, okay. All right. Salaki, this was Psalms. All right. This is Psalms 137:7. Remember, O Lord, the children of Edom, in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, even to the foundation thereof. Raise it meaning destroy it. Bring it down completely. Okay. So you remembered, man. Esau, you got to pay for that. It says, and now, O Lord, the king, that is, this is that which I require, and which I desire of thee, and this is the princely liberty proceeding from thyself. I desire, therefore, that thou make good the vow, the performance whereof thine own mouth has vowed to the King of heaven. Then Darius stood up and kissed him, and wrote letters for him unto all the treasurers and lieutenants and captains and governors, that they should safely convey on their way both him and all those that go up with him to build Jerusalem. Okay, so he basically said, okay, I'll give you permission to go, but I'll also I'm going to finance the building of the kingdom. Okay, let me see. Oh, it says verse 50, and that the country, all the country which they hold should be free without tribute. So we didn't have to pay tribute. And that the Edomites should give over the villages of the Jews which they held. You damn demons. You're going, man, Esau got to pay. All right. So it goes down, it goes down, it goes down. So they sent away the vessels. They gave us all our stuff back. Okay, and then they let us, go back and, let me read it right here. It says in verse 61, and so he took the letters and went out and came on to Babylon and told it all his brethren. And this was Zerubbabel. And they praised the Lord, power of their fathers, because he had given them freedom and liberty. See, because when they went back during Cyrus's time to rebuild and it was halted, guess what? They went back to Babylon because they couldn't keep building. So they went back to Babylon to, because, being there for a while, you got houses, you got dwelling places over there. Okay. So that's where he went to tell his brethren, hey, look, we got permission to go build a temple again. It says, and they praised the God of their fathers because he had given them freedom and liberty to go up and to build Jerusalem and the temple which is called by his name. And they feasted with instruments of music and gladness 7 days. So this is how, when it says in Ezra, it was halted until the time of Darius. Well, this is how the Lord basically allowed us to go back and rebuild the temple. But now there was a problem with that. Which is, and around this time is where you had Zechariah and I believe it was Hosea or I forgot who, or Haggai and Zechariah. That's right. Let's check that. I think it's Haggai. Let me search it in here. Haggai 1. All right. This is Haggai 1:1. It says, in the second year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, in the first day of the month, came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet unto Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Josedek, the high priest, saying, thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, this people say, the time is not come, that the time that the Lord's house shall be built. See, because what happened? We were in Babylon for so long, Jake started getting comfortable. You had certain Israelites that didn't want to go back up to Jerusalem to go build the temple. They started getting comfortable. Okay, and that's why the Lord raised up Haggai and Zechariah to go curse Jake's ass out. Okay, and tell him, yo, get your ass up and get to building. See, Zechariah 1:1. In the 8th month, in the 2nd year of Darius. See, so they're contemporaries. Came the word of the Lord unto Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo the prophet, saying, the Lord hath been sore displeased with your fathers. Therefore say thou unto them, thus saith the Lord of hosts, turn ye unto me, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will turn unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. All right. Yeah. Okay, so now going back to Haggai, it's going to go down, just going to go straight to the point. All right, it says here, verse 12, then Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, with all the remnant of the people, obeyed the voice of the Lord their God, and the words of Haggai the prophet, as the Lord their God had sent him, and the people did fear before the Lord. Then spake Haggai the Lord's messenger in the Lord's message unto the people, saying, I am with you, saith the Lord. And the Lord stirred up the spirit of Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and the spirit of Joshua the son of Josedek, the high priest, and the spirit of all the remnant of the people, and they came and did work in the house of the Lord, power of hosts their God, in the 24th day of the 6th month, in the 2nd year of Darius the king. All right, Salak. Let's see. So basically, he's continuously exhorting them to build. All right, but there's another part here where they started getting I think it might be in the 5th chapter or so, where Jake started getting lackadaisical. All right, so the Lord basically had to, curse their ass out. He told them basically, my house is not built, but you're building your own house. If I could find it, just looking through. I don't remember it off the top. I think it's in the 5th chapter, but I'm not too sure. But hey, I know it's in one of them. You know, when you read through Zechariah, and Haggai, there's a scripture in there where they basically, you know, telling Jake, get your ass up and start working on the house of the Lord. You know, you working on your house, but my house is destitute. It's desolate. So long story short, during the reign of Darius, we were able to complete the building of the temple. Okay, but it wasn't until the time of Nehemiah that we were able to complete the walls. Okay, so going back, Darius, it says, Darius, okay, we read this part. The new king met with rebellions throughout his kingdom. So now we're gonna get to the 4th king, and why it says, and by his strength through his riches he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. We're gonna get to that. It says a major event in Darius's life. Okay, it says the new king met with rebellions throughout his kingdom and quelled them each time. A major event in Darius's life was his expedition to punish Athens and Eretria for their aid in the Ionian revolt and subjugate Greece. So, remember what I told you earlier, okay, dealing with, let's see, Achaemenid Empire. I mentioned earlier that they conquered, okay, a lot of land. Let me see, Empire map. Here we go. This is the map I pulled earlier, and I mentioned that this was going to cause problems for them. Ionia is around, this area is in Asia Minor. All right, and basically what happened was you had that when the Persians were over the Greeks, they set up what they call tyrants, all right, which were like governors over them. But they would take a native Greek and make them like ruler over those people that would answer to the Persians. And you had one of these men called Aristogoras, who he wanted to gain props. He wanted to go up in the ranks. So he set up basically a campaign, which he failed. And upon failing that campaign, he feared that he would lose his position and be ousted. So he instead sparked a revolt, all right, in Ionia. He sparked a Greek revolt in Ionia, which is what led to the Ionian revolt. And the Greeks basically went and burnt down Sardis, which is one of the cities of Persia. And then it became a back and forth, you know. But during this time, Athens and Eretria, which are all the way in Europe, okay, in Greece, they came over and helped the Greeks that were over here revolt against the Persians. So when the Persians finally shut things down and took over and quelled things down, Darius, who was the king at the time, was like, nah, he wants to punish the Athens and Eretria for aiding in the Ionian revolt. This is what ultimately leads to the Battle of 300, or the Battle of Thermopylae in the movie 300. Okay, so it says, and subjugate Greece. Although ultimately ending in failure at the Battle of Marathon, Darius succeeded in the resubjugation of Thrace, expansion of the empire through the conquest of Macedon, the Cyclades, and the islands of Naxos, and the sacking of the city of Eretria. Darius organized the empire by dividing it into provinces and placing satraps to govern it. All right, and it goes more and more in here. Now, you have something called, well, it says it right here, Persian invasion of Greece. Okay, and I'm not going to read through it. I'm just going to sum it up for you. You can read it on your own. You had the first Persian invasion of Greece, and it's literally as it says. Okay, Persia invaded Greece. They came up into Greece because what? Darius said he wanted to punish Athens and Eretria. So they came up in here, and they basically, I think they were able to get Eretria, but they lost against Athens. Okay, but they made that statement of, look, this is what we're doing, you know what I mean, and we out here to show you, you know what I'm saying, that we are the authority. You're not gonna revolt against us and everything is gonna be all sweet. Okay, now Darius then sent messengers, okay, all throughout these different Greek areas to gain their subjection. Like, hey, you know what I'm saying, we the top dog. We want you to understand that. But when they got to Sparta, they got executed. Okay, now they'll show you a clip of that when King Leonidas basically kicks the messengers down the well, you know, and then takes them out. Okay, but they were basically executed. Okay, and so Darius says, you know what? I'm gonna have another Persian invasion of Greece. I'm setting up another invasion. All right, that I'm gonna, you know, basically use to go up into Greece. But he ended up dying before that, and so his son Xerxes was the one who had to continue that invasion of Greece, and that was called the second Persian invasion of Greece, which led to the Battle of Thermopylae, all right, which was between the Spartans and, you know, the Persians and so on and so forth. Okay, it says Darius responded by, I'm just going to read this last paragraph here. Darius responded by sending troops led by his son-in-law across the Hellespont. However, a violent storm and harassment of the Thracians forced the troops to return to Persia. Seeking revenge on Athens and Eretria, Darius assembled another army of 20,000 men under his admiral Datis and his nephew Artaphernes, who met success when they captured Eretria and advanced to Marathon. In 490 BC, at the Battle of Marathon, the Persian army was defeated by a heavily armed Athenian army, with 9,000 men who were supported by 600 Plataeans and 10,000 lightly armed soldiers led by Miltiades, whatever his name is, Miltiades. The defeat of Marathon marked the end of the first Persian invasion of Greece. Darius began preparations for a second force, which he would command instead of his generals. However, before the preparations were complete, Darius died, thus leaving the task to his son Xerxes. That was the fourth king. Okay, in Daniel 11 and verse 2, it says, the fourth shall be far richer than they all. This was Xerxes, son of Darius. And by his strength through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. Now this is why he did it, because he was continuing that what his father had started, leading into the second Persian invasion of Greece. That's how he stirred up all against the realm of Grecia. Okay, I'm going to read this first portion here, and we're going to close it out. So it says, Xerxes the first, commonly known as Xerxes the Great, was the fourth king of kings of the Achaemenid Empire. See? Daniel 11 and 2. There shall stand up yet three kings, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all. It says, ruling from 486 to 465, he was the son and successor of Darius the Great. This Xerxes is the Ahasuerus of Esther, you know, the Ahasuerus in the book of Esther. All right, husband of Esther. And you can read in the book of Esther and find that out. That's him. Okay. It says, and his mother was Atosa, the daughter of Cyrus the Great, the first Achaemenid king. Like his father, he ruled the empire at its territorial apex. He ruled from 486 BC until his assassination in 465 BC at the hands of Artabanus, the commander of the royal bodyguard. Xerxes I is notable in Western history for his failed invasion of Greece in 480. See, so they went up in there, but they still failed at the end of it all. His forces temporarily overran mainland Greece in the North Isthmus of Corinth until losses at Salamis and Plataea a year later reversed these gains and ended the second invasion decisively. Okay, and that's all we're going to read on him. It says Xerxes is identified with the fictional king of Ahasuerus in the biblical book of Esther. Now notice how they call him fictional, right? That book is broadly considered to be fictional. Why is it considered to be fictional? Okay, how come? Because it's from the Bible. See these devils right here, they'll give you certain information, but then they'll tell you, oh no, it's fake. It's not fake, it's not fictional. All right, the Bible is also a history book. Okay. So Daniel 11 and 2, all right, as I just gave you the background and the detail of it, now you understand why there's so much history behind it. Okay, so these were the three kings, you know, or the four kings. The king at the time was Cyrus, and the three kings that were yet to stand up were Cambyses II, Bardiya, and Darius the Great. And the fourth king, which came up, after them, was Xerxes the first. And now you know why he stirred up all against the realm of Grecia. Leading into verse 3, all right, them invading Greece, and then the whole situation with the Ionian revolt sparked that it caused Greece to now have a certain great hatred, all right, for the Persians. And that's what's going to lead us to, Philip of Macedon and Alexander being able to unite Greece and have them come up against the Persians, because they already had that hate over there. Okay, so I'm going to end it off there. Okay, Lord willing, that was edifying unto the elect. I know it was a long video, but when you go into the history and the details of things, it's expected. Okay, so in closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.